Bring back the draft? A divisive home front battle will loom over any major war. And this article just coming out today. Now, I've got some pretty shocking news to share with you on this, and there's been a lot coming out on this. Take a look. It has been trending. People searching, is there going to be a U.S. draft? And at first you might think no. However, wait till you see some of the more recent articles that have been coming out on this. Fact checkers saying that no, the United States is not bringing back the draft. However, what might be surprising to you is the reason why and how this still might be a possibility. Now, take a look at this. A draft can only be ordered through an act of Congress, which is not considering doing so because we are currently not in a war at this moment. So in other words, they're saying legally, President Joe Biden cannot issue an executive order to reinstate the draft. However, Congress can do so if they feel that it is needed when we are in a time of war. Take a look at this. Military recruiting woes worry voters, but most still oppose the draft, as they're saying if we were to enter into war at this time, we do not have enough people in our U.S. military. And take a look at this. Military draft needed in the U.S. A letter just issued a couple weeks ago. I'm going to be sharing this with you as they're saying, we need it. We do not have enough armed forces. And take a look at the article that just came out today. It says the United States Army is facing a dire combination of recruiting shortfalls and shrinking individual ready reserves. The shrink, they cite, is alarming. The individual ready reserve, which stood with 700,000 in 1973, 450,000 in 1994, well, today it's only 76,000, 1/10 of what we had in our armed forces in 1973, which was 50 years ago. These numbers cannot fill the existing gaps in the active forces, let alone any casualty replacement or expansion during a large-scale combat operation. Large-scale combat operations troop requirements may well require a reconceptualization of the 1970s and 1980s volunteer force and a move toward partial conscription, aka reinstating the draft, or a partial conscription would unleash powerful social, political, and cultural shockwaves throughout America, and I'm pretty sure we all would be in shock to hear that they would be sending essentially Gen Z into war if the United States were forced into World War III. After 50 years, any conscription, no matter how partial, would be off the charts contentious. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. They are saying no, there is not a draft at this time, but we are currently not officially in war, and if we were, they're saying we do not have enough people to support a war. And then let me ask you this, do you think that Congress would then issue legislation saying it's time for a draft because we do not have enough armed forces? Now, take a look. A lot of this started off because the post-millennial put out this video of President Joe Biden issuing the draft by executive order. I'm going to share with you the video footage so you can see it for yourself here in just a second. Now, just to clarify, this was AI. The video of Joe Biden calling for a military draft was created with AI. They're saying that this was false. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, I'm going to be covering the details of what is coming out. I'm going to share with you the video footage and also give you information regarding if a draft happened, what it would look like, and also in addition to that, the letter that came out saying we actually do need a draft. We do not have enough in our military. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to share with you the latest updates, and I know that this is not what anybody wants to hear, that we could potentially be going to war and drafting out our young men. However, I believe that knowledge is power, and if you appreciate me giving you the latest knowledge, the latest updates, do me a quick favor, smash the like button. Helps with the YouTube algorithm. Hit subscribe to stay up to date. Turn on that notification bell and share this out if you think it could help out other people get the latest information as well. As I said, these articles just came out today. I will cite them in the description so you can click on them and read them for yourself. But with that being said, let's dive right in and take a look at these articles about the U.S. draft and what we could potentially be looking at with World War III.
Putin's illegal occupation of Kyiv and the impending Chinese blockade of Taiwan has created a two-front national security crisis that requires more troops than the volunteer military can supply. I have received guidance from General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that the recommended way forward will be to invoke the Selective Service Act, as is my authority as president. The first to be called in a sequence determined by national lottery will be men and women whose 20th birthday falls during calendar year 2023. Remember, you're not sending your sons and daughters to war. You're sending them to freedom. God bless our troops and God bless Ukraine.
So that was the AI video, and I think there was a couple of giveaways that it was not real. The first one, I think, is that, well, it referenced Russia and Ukraine. It was also released back in February, and this started circulating and getting a lot of attention in October with the Israel-Hamas war. In addition to that, the president does not have the executive authority, as he mentioned, to issue the draft. It must be done by Congress. And lastly, I have not heard President Biden articulate that well in quite some time. I did not think that that was him for a second. But take a look at this article. U.S. President Joe Biden did not call for military conscription in the United States in response to the Israel-Hamas conflict in October of 2023, as suggested by an AI-generated video shared on social media. The fabricated clip shows U.S. President Joe Biden speaking at a podium saying that he is invoking the Selective Service Act, adding, "Remember, you are not sending your sons and daughters to war, you are sending them to freedom." A history of the Selective Service in the United States, also known as the draft, can be seen on the government agency's website. The altered video surfaced on Facebook and TikTok days after Hamas launched an offensive on Israel on October 7th, prompting speculation about President Biden's role in mediating the conflict. One user said in the comments on Facebook, "Not even if I got paid $1 trillion would I send my children to freaking greedy wars that don't belong to them." Now again, the president does not have the executive order. That was an AI fabrication of the president, but a lot of people are saying that if we go into war, we do not have enough military forces. And what if Congress did issue the draft? And I already shared with you, they said that we have an incredible shortfall in our military. Take a look at this article, as I mentioned, that came out today. It also says, in addition to traditional, ethical, and constitutional concerns, it is hard to even imagine how well the "hell no, we won't go" of the 1960s would catch on in a modern era of social media. Many military-age youth would protest conscription as a violation of their individual liberty. Even when the draft is not deadly, it can sidetrack the lives of young men or even women if they are made to register for years. A draft may also force many to participate in activities that potentially countervene their moral, religious, or personal beliefs. Just imagine if conscription were deemed essential to help defend our allies in Israel. War would break out on college campuses, would it not? As in the Vietnam era, a draft could also disproportionately affect disadvantaged communities. Families with more resources often find more ways to avoid conscription, whereas those of lesser means are more likely to bear the greater burden. Even where this doesn't happen, the suspicion that it does will intensify resentments. Nonetheless, with warring headlines from the Middle East combined with Ukraine's lessons and warnings published 6 weeks before the Hamas attack Israel, one imagines that the Pentagon is forecasting its conscription needs just in case. And like I said, wait till you see this letter here in just a second. The potential for the U.S. to help defend Israel against Iran's proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, could turn into a more expansive and prolonged war with American boots-on-the-ground engagement. Simultaneously, Ukraine's fight against its Russian invaders continues to strain American stockpiles of military hardware and ammunition that are also needed for Israel. Meanwhile, the Israeli conflict could negatively affect U.S. military recruitment. Even before the Hamas attack, every branch was falling short of its goals except for the smaller Marine Corps. According to the Department of Defense, for 2023, the Army is short 15,000 recruits, the Navy is down 10,000, and the Air Force 3,000 recruits. Now, jumping down in the article, it says, naturally, there was outrage and profanities from those who believe that the Biden deepfake AI-generated draft call was real that I shared with you. Since the 1980s, the Selective Service has required men ages 18 to 25 to register and participate in a national draft lottery should the President and Congress reinstate conscription due to a national emergency. At any time, Congress could modify the law to require female registration as well. But everyone knows that reinstating the draft will spark a fierce domestic battle, detracting from the war efforts. After 50 years, a 21st century draft would be a national nightmare. But could reinstating a draft be worse than potentially losing a major war? Let's hope Americans don't have to answer that question. And theoretically, let's go ahead and take a look at the information regarding a draft so that way we can know the latest. Congress can invoke the draft. So not by executive order, this would have to come through Congress by amending the Military Selective Service Act to authorize the president to induct personnel into the armed forces. This can happen during a national emergency when the Department of Defense can't recruit and retain its total force strength, which we are currently in that situation. The U.S. hasn't had a draft since 1973. If there was a draft, it would only include fighting-age men. Federal law requires nearly all male U.S. citizens and male immigrants ages 18 through 25 to register with Selective Service, so that would be the age range that would be in the draft. Failure to register with the Selective Service is a felony punishable by a fine of up to $250,000 and or 5-year imprisonment. There are currently no plans to bring back mandatory conscription in the USA. Spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense said that only Congress and the President have the ability to call for a draft, and our military currently has not recommended elected officials even consider it. However, we are also currently not officially in war yet. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you believe our government, as they're saying there is nothing to worry about, there is no draft on the way, but at the same time, that is because we are currently not officially in war. And if we were to declare war, we're finding out, you saw the numbers, that our military armed forces are lacking in almost every single area. And they said that we would need to make up the gap, the shortfall, in our armed forces. And as I mentioned, take a look at this. Just came out a couple weeks ago, October 20th, military draft needed in the U.S. Nobody asked me, but with an annual shortfall of enlistees in the U.S. military, I believe that young men, males, should be subject to the military draft or alternative services if they are not employed full-time or are not full-time students at age 25. R.L. Horst, U.S. Navy veteran. Now, tensions are rising with different nations around the world, all centering around the Israel-Hamas war. And right now, the biggest concern in the U.S. is attacks from Iran and Hamas and from terrorist groups that they're saying are already here in the United States. And we heard that we should be watching our major infrastructure, a big warning coming out from the FBI just a couple days ago. And then right after that, the very next day, details coming out saying, watch the water, watch the power grids, watch our airports. These are where they believe some of those that might be interested in attacking us here on our soil will be looking at. Now, to get the latest on that, be sure to check out these videos right here. And you guys, I'll keep you up to date as more information comes out. But thank you so much for joining me. Take care. I'll catch you in the next video. God bless. This is Steve.